Hello and welcome back to Game Brigade. I'm your host Brian, and on this show we do reviews, previews, playthroughs, and have conversations about our favorite board games. So if you're new here, please consider subscribing. Today in the show we're taking a look at Primal the Awakening. This is a Kickstarter that just launched today, and I've been pretty excited to cover it. So let's go ahead and take a deep dive on Primal the Awakening. Okay guys, Primal the Awakening, we're currently on day one, 13 days to go. There are 4,431 backers, and they've just eclipsed the 1 million mark at $1,123,000. Primal the Awakening is probably the big launch of January as we enter the new Kickstarter season. We've kind of had a really slow last 2 months, I would say, in terms of big. I mean, we had ISS Vanguard, but now we have Primal the Awakening, which is going to be the next big box Kickstarter where a lot of people are going to be talking about. I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into this game in terms of the gameplay mechanics and how this works. There's a lot of content creators out there on YouTube lately that are now discussing Kickstarters and doing kind of these Kickstarter review previews that we've been doing. So I want to try to elevate my channel as much as I can and just say, what more value could I provide to you guys? So that's what my hope is today, and kind of discuss the game and see if this is worth it for you or if you should be backing it, and talk about anything that we can come across. So what is Primal Awakening? Well, this is going to be a cooperative game using a deck crafting system, which is going to be a boss battler that's been popularized by KDM. So it's going to have similar experiences to games like Oathsworn, Kingdom Death Monster we just mentioned. The latest Kickstarter, which was Townsfolk Tussle, was another of these boss battler games. What was unique about this one is they used this square here for the board, and instead of games like Oathsworn, where the creature is going to be moving around the map, interacting with the player, and depending on your situation, it's basically just going to be rotating, or going to have a card referencing how the creature is interacting with you at that given time. And the unique part about this mechanic is that at any individual time, there are going to be weak points and resistance points that are like parts of the creature's body that are going to be available to be attacked. When I think of this, I kind of think of the video game, Horizon Zero Dawn, where you're going to have like weak points that you need to target. Otherwise, the creature is going to be heavily armored and unable to be, damaged in a way. So as you're kind of doing this flow, the game kind of represents kind of a fluid, a thematic feel in terms of how combat is reacting. And as you play your cards, you need to be doing aggressive movement, parrying, or dodging, trying to anticipate the movements of the monster, and kind of like what a true hunter would be in a situation like that. So before we dive further into the combat, let's talk about the contents. Right now, there's an early bird, although by the time this launches, there's going to be a very narrow window for that still to be available. So if you haven't checked this campaign out, as soon as this video goes live, and I'll probably release this video earlier than I normally do so that people can take a look at the campaign page if they haven't already done so, I recommend backing in early on one of the two early birds. That way you can lock it in if you are like 50-50 on this. And then as the campaign flushes out, as we get to see more, then you could decide if you want to keep it or not. Although the early bird isn't a huge discount in terms of monetary value, it is there. So the core set, what's in the box? We're going to get 17 large scale miniatures. They're claiming this is all going to be in a single box. So that means this thing is going to be big. 4 hunter models, 12 monster models with 1 extra large monster model. I think that's the dragon here that's on the cover. We're going to have a bunch of cards that are in this game. The game is going to be basically a card building game. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of Gloomhaven in a way, in terms of how you're going to be building your deck. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more. So the biggest thing about this game in terms of what other RPG games reference is that your characters are going to be more in tune to type of weapon they use rather than like the type of class you are. Instead of being a ranger or a warrior, you are a great sword, you are a great bow. So that's going to be the difference, because the weapon that you use will be a direct correlation to the type of deck and the gameplay that you're playing. And as you upgrade your weapon, or you change your weapons based on the type of monsters you're killing, it's still, that's where the flow of your character development will mostly be coming from. Now, they do have a 5th player expansion, which includes 2 new characters. So there will be a total of 6 characters for you to choose from instead of the 4 base ones in the campaign, if you choose to get that as well. And then the monsters here are fully revealed, so you can take a look at their art and kind of the design elements to them. What I like about the monsters here is they are going to be very elemental based. So you're going to have fire, you're going to have crystal, most likely you're going to have acid, or some sort of acid type thing. I think there's going to be an ice one as well, based on some of the photos I've seen. And these monsters are going to have resistances and strengths to different types of elemental weapons or gear, armor that you have. So as you're taking on your quest, as you're taking on the mission, you're going to have to understand the target you're going after and what is going to be the best resource or tool to use in that situation. Because things are going to be stronger or weaker to specific type of gear that you're outfitting yourself with. So here's some more of those types of monsters. You can see here, this is kind of that reference I was referring to in terms of how they're going to be armored or defensive in terms of their stance. This is, right now he'd be resilient to the sides and weak to the back and front, so you can know what you need to target, or if you need to flow and move around in the combat. There's also going to be obstacles or environmental effects that are going to be affecting the game. So as you move around, things could be positively affected or negatively affected if there's a fire or some sort of environmental hazard. Here's another example of that stance card. And they're also going to have behavior cards, based on how the creature is going to be behaving, and these will be cycled through. So you cannot, cheat the game, I guess you would say. So a bunch of creatures here, just a lot of individual creatures. I have some opinions based on, this guy looks like a kaiju to me. Some of these creatures look like kaijus to me, especially this guy. That looks like a kaiju from, what's that show called? Pacific Rim, the movie Pacific Rim. You can't tell me that's not. That's definitely what that guy is. One of the things that I was a little bit iffy on is definitely this game is going to be, here are the massive creatures you're going to be fighting against. There's no individual little creatures that you're going to be practicing on or starting on. It's basically, here's a massive monster. We're basically going to assume that you're probably already a fairly well-renowned warrior at this point. So I get nervous in terms of replayability, because you just have right now these few creatures, and I do have a feeling, based off what I've read out so far in the campaign, that you almost this is almost like an all-in game. Now, I do think this game is going to be protected in terms of your overall backing. This is going to be probably maintaining its value for a long time, especially if the gameplay holds up to the early reviewers' stances on how well it does play. But I do think that most likely this is to get the gameplay out of this that we'd want. I normally don't like saying stuff like that, because I normally think that a lot of times we overbuy expansions that we don't need. This one, I almost think that we need the expansions to get the full experience out of this game. So right here on the campaign page, we are kind of stopping here at the weapons and the forging ability. And I want to kind of talk about that. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to skip over here to the rule book and talk a little bit about how this game is different and what it's trying to do. So forging and building, constructing new equipment and potions are going to be one of the key elements to this game and part of the campaign experience. So what we're going to be looking at here is obviously your level 1 Fire Forge. If you want to build a piece of equipment, these are the types of different weapons that you could personally build. Also, depending on your class, if you're the sword class, the bow class, the hammer class, or the shield class, this is the type of gear you could get here at the forge. And then we have different types of armor. Now, the armor, as I mentioned, will have an elemental base to it. So it's going to have a power or resistance to a specific element type, but also could be weaker to different types of creatures. So that's something to take note of. You can't see very well here, but they're kind of showing you, here's the item, here's the class it is. In this case, it's the chest plate. The name of it, red scale armor, and then it has the types of resources that you need to build it. You'll need the fire element because it's a fire element gear, and then 2 pieces of the resources to construct this gear. They also show the same thing for the weapon. If you want to get this flame tongue, you're going to have to construct it in a certain way. Now, what I think is interesting, here's where it shows you the weaknesses: strong against and weak against, so you have a better idea of what kind of gear your armor is set for. What I like about this game so far is when you're building your deck, the type of weapon you use that you decide to construct is going to make a difference in terms of the deck that you're actually building. So if we take a look at the Flame Tongue here at level 1, the type of cards that you can build in your deck are going to be listed here, which are going to basically, limiting you the amount of actual cards that you can play. So if you really like the attack cards, you can't run 12 attack cards. You can only run 6. So this is in a very interesting kind of restricted element, which is going to make that deck building phase much more enjoyable. So you can see there, they discuss this here, and I think that's really interesting. So that is the key element here in terms of the key difference. And it also talks about how you level up your gear and your moves. You'll need a certain level to play in, which very much reminded me of Gloomhaven. So if you needed to use a certain skill, you had to be level 2. Same thing here. As you level up, you are able to unlock additional abilities and skills. So you can see here the different types of elemental gear. They have the horn, they have flame, you've got the crystal, you've got the coral, we've got the thunder, as well as the metal. Now, there are going to be additional resources as the game progresses, as we get more of the expansions fleshed out, but those are currently the types of elemental tracks you can go in. And then the alchemist track is going to be a way to build potions, or a way to build potions by collecting resources from each map that can have an effect. So this game is going to have several different phases. It's basically going to be you choose. There's actually 4 phases, but we can actually go back to the rule book here. Let me just show the phases. It's a little higher, somewhere right around here. Okay, so you're going to have the event phase. We're going to check for any events. We're going to have the quest board phase, but this is the final 2 phases are really going to be the meat and bones of this game. The garrison phase, where you're going to upgrade your character, you're going to be doing your construction stuff. Basically, everything that happens in terms of prepping yourself for the actual event will happen in the garrison phase, and then you'll have the event phase where you actually are going to fight your monster. I kind of like the idea that it's almost like an RPG in the sense that you're going to have like a side quest that you're going to take, as well as the main quest from the bounty board. You're going to go up, you're going to look at the bounty boards. Okay, who do I want to take? Almost like Witcher 3, if any of you played that game. You're going to take the bounty. You're going to know what kind of creature you're going to be facing against, most likely, and what kind of elements it might be worth. Because maybe you're like, I need to get a crystal monster. I need crystal elements because I want to build this special weapon I have. So we're going to take this crystal bounty, and that's where you'll go and then do the event phase from there. So let's go ahead and transition back here. So let's go down to the pledge levels, because I think this is where they talk about the deck construction here as well. Okay, the pledge level currently is showing 139 euros, approximately $168 for the core box. That is the main box with all the components that we've discussed in terms of creatures and hunters. The all-in pledge, which is going to include 4 more mini expansions, 1 being a 5th player expansion and 3 being actual monster expansions with different elements, is going to be coming in at 239 euros, or approximately 289 US dollars. This is the one that I was saying that I felt like was going to be more necessity, because I feel like the 2 extra hunters is to me going to be valuable. I don't necessarily care about playing with a 5th player. Like, to me, this game could be easily great at 1, 2, 3 players. So I'm not truly interested in the 5th player aspect. but having the variety of the different type of hunters and gear that we can play with, to me, is pretty important. And I also think having additional monsters with additional elements will add a variety to keep the longevity of this game in my collection longer than it would with the base collection. Although this is a significant price increase for that, so I do think it's something to take a consideration from. If you want to buy things a la carte as add-ons, you are able to. They're approximately about $50 a piece. So that's, except for the 5th player expansion, which is about $30. So just take note of that. And if you do want a little bit of a discount in terms of the MSRP, this is definitely the way to go. The final thing that I want to talk about, they're also going to have stretch goals. They're going to be daily unlocks. So nothing really to see there. The final thing I want to talk about was shipping, because shipping is going to be interesting, and there are some things regarding shipping that I'm not too happy about, especially one thing that was brought up to me by one of my viewers in the Discord. If you guys are ever interested in talking campaigns or discussing things, I more than welcome you to invite you to the Discord. Join the Kickstarter discussions. We talk everything Kickstarters. We also have a board game section. So if you just want to talk about board games in general, just come and join the conversation with us there. So shipping is going to be listed down here. US and Canada, you're 25 to 35 euros. So expect this to be closer to $50 to $70 for US, which is fairly high. UK and Europe is matching. Australia, generally Australia is higher than this, so I'm pleasantly surprised to see that. I am very much surprised to see rest of the world hammered in 120 to 150 euros. This is backbreaking for a lot of people that are not in these core units, so I feel sorry for them. The other interesting fact here, though, if you checked Update 1, they mentioned, we're not going to actually dig into that, but they mentioned in Update 1 that VAT is going to be, VAT is going to be included into the cost of the game as it is. So it's built into the actual overall cost of the pledge. What I don't care for that, and there's a reason they're doing that. They're doing that because a lot of UK and European EU people, especially lately in the CMON launch with Massive Darkness 2, were very upset to see the VAT cost add-on as well as their shipping cost. And unfortunately, VAT is not an optional thing for companies to pay. That is something they are required to pay. And so that is something that's being put onto the UK and EU backers. So what these guys have done, instead of putting it into the pledge manager as additional shipping costs that EU would have to buy, they're just going to place it into the overall cost and subsidize it for the UK and EU backers, so that everyone in the world that's backing this game will basically be paying that tax collectively for them. In my opinion, I don't think that US, Australia, New Zealand, China, or rest of the world people should technically be having to pay for a UK EU tax in terms of what those countries have decided to do for their shipping policies. But I do understand that the cost is very, especially on this one, which what we're looking at here in terms of a total overall cost, the VAT shipping price would be very, very high, in terms of an additional cost, maybe additional 70 or 100 euros. So I can see as to why they don't want to have the price be lower, let's say 120 or 130 euros for the base price, and then adding on at the pledged manager an additional $70 to the EU people, because that would be shocking. But I want to get your guys' opinion. What do you think of that? I mean, I know that I wasn't happy about seeing the rest of the world being affected by the choices of not the backers, but the countries, the governments in this area. But I understand that by doing it the way they're doing, they're able to subsidize that cost and reduce the overall VAT, because they're still paying the VAT. They're just not going to put as much cost onto the EU people. So that's something to take note of. Overall, I still think, even at the price right now, the gameplay all in $239, I still think there's enough game here to be worth it. And normally at this point we jump back to my full face, so let's do that. Why not? I generally think that there's enough here to be worth the cost. I think the game is going to be interesting. I think it's going to be another KDM-like boss battler. I've played Oathsworn on TTS and really enjoyed the aspect of boss battling and the way of targeting specific regions, and having a boss that reacts and responds to your movements. I'm a little weaker on this one because I think the campaign is not as fleshed out in terms of what I've seen in the rule book. It's you go to your place, you look at some missions, you select it, you go on, and once you fought 11 monsters, or if you got into 11 aggressive, then you trigger the final boss. There's not going to be much of a narrative, at least from what I'm seeing. They might show more narrative aspects. They have some flavor text kind of thrown in there and lore, but it's not going to be like a true narrative game like Oathsworn. So there's definitely some interesting things here. I definitely think that the game is going to be an enjoyable experience. It's just definitely going to be an expensive one. And there's going to be another type of game, an actual Monster Hunter, I believe, Monster World or something, coming out later this year from another publisher that you could keep your eyes on. From what I've seen between the two, Primal looks better, but just be aware of that. So this was Brian with Game Brigade. We're going to be finishing up talking about Primal, so we're going to wrap it up with my sign-off. So I appreciate everyone who stayed for the show. I'd like to know your guys' opinions on this one. Let me know what you think. If you are still here for the Oathsworn giveaway, we're still doing it, as you all know. So we're going to leave a comment down below with hashtag Awakening. We're going to switch it up a little bit. Instead of Primal, we'll do hashtag Awakening, to let me know what you guys think. If you're going to be backing this game, what do you think about my thoughts in terms of how this gameplay works, and what do you think works, what do you think doesn't work? Let's have some conversations regarding Primal the Awakening. If you really want to support the show, you all know what to do. Smash the like button, show YouTube we want to see more content from Game Brigade. They'll push me out to more channels, which is what I really want to do. I appreciate everyone who's been staying. I will talk to you all very soon.